Award-winning comedian who has entertained us all for more than 40 years and continues doing exactly that with personal appearances and his wonderful HBO specials. His book, his hysterical book, Brain Droppings, is now paperback, and it's a pleasure to welcome Mr. Carlin back to CBS. Thanks for coming on. And,
thank you.
And thanks for all the good times we've had here over the years. I always have a good time with you.
This is one of my favorite stops.
Now, let me ask you here about the news that's been going on this year and your attitude. You know, we've talked about this before. When we think something is bad, George thinks it's good.
See, I root for the complete disintegration and destruction and decay of society.
Why?
Because it's more entertaining that way. Anybody can root for a good outcome. It takes a special kind of person to say, let's end this silly chemical accident, because that's all it is. A comet hit, the dinosaurs went away, the ferrets grew into people, in a manner of speaking. And now it's, you know, our turn. I think we've done it. I think we've done all we can. I think it's time to let the cockroaches have it. I was praying for the big asteroid and the big comet.
Oh, you were?
Long before these movies were on the drawing board. And in fact, I had data on it from NASA. NASA had a plan. I don't know if this is still in operation, but they had one of these plans for deflecting an asteroid. And the plan was only to be used if more than 1 billion people were going to die. And if, in other words, if 900,000 people were going to die, fine.
Let them go.
1 billion plus 10 people, and they were going to stop the asteroid. So I just thought that was nice to have an arbitrary line, a cutoff line.
You must have loved the day the satellite went out and all the pages in America stopped working.
Anything that bothers people, I enjoy. And I've had a good year. El Nino made my year.
How so?
Disrupting everyone, injuring a few, killing some. Nothing wrong with that. Going to go anyway, sooner or later, different ways. Why not do it in a way that entertains me? And the only downside to El Nino, less hurricanes. That disappointed me, because that's one of my favorite things. The nice thing about hurricanes is they take so long to get there. You know, you can watch them for several days. But Indonesia, all of these I countries have been doing good things for me. Iraq,
the bombs?
Iran, Indonesia with the riots, plus the smoke coming up to mess up the people in Malaysia. The smoke from Mexico and Texas, I like this. Very disappointed in the Irish. Very disappointed in the Irish.
With the yes on the peace vote?
Peace thing, last thing we need. It's not going to, you know what? It can do no good. It can do no good, because we'll find a way around. You've got to get the British out of there. You just simply have to.
Where does this attitude come from? Have you had it since you're a little kid?
Well, I think secretly I did. I didn't acknowledge it or recognize it or notice it until the early 70s, when I did that show, that HBO show that included the thing about the planet. It was really an attack on environmentalism as a disguised yuppie boomer way of getting a nice place to live. That's all they care about, is themselves. So that's all the environmentalism. We want a safe place to live, a nice, clean place. Nothing to do with the planet. That's misdirection. The planet, the planet. They don't care about the planet.
Nice, safe, clean place to live.
Bicycle paths and places to put the Volvo that it won't get dirty. This is when I noticed that I didn't really have a stake in the outcome anymore.
Got you, right.
Didn't care about the species. Don't really care about this republic. Have no beliefs. Believe in friends and family. And believe in individuals. I love people one by one.
Gotcha.
But as soon as they begin to clot,
check, please. 2
or 3 more, yes. Security, over here.
Now, I know that in your book, you have some pages devoted to Bob Hope.
Anyway.
You know what I mean? But anyway, I mentioned that because I mentioned here last night in Congress, Congressman Army, who's the majority leader,
bright person,
very bright man, saw that Bob Hope died on a misdirected AP advance wire, and had it read to the floor of the House of Representatives. I thought to myself, how can they not check to find out if Bob is still alive before they announce he's dead?
Make a couple of calls.
Just
one corroborating person who says, I saw him. No, I have a thing in there called Super Celeb Kicks the Bucket. And what this is about is, this is one thing I enjoy. And actually my partner, Jerry Hims, enjoys this too. Complaining, that is, about something that's annoying and bothersome. When a huge celebrity dies, you know, I don't care about the person. I'm not interested in seeing all these tributes. It goes on for weeks, the bigger they are. And I mentioned Bob Hope in the book. I'm glad he survived long enough for the book to be timely and not to seem like it was cruel. But I used him as an example of what you have to go through.
Bob has had a long, long career, and he's famous around the world.
That's right. And comedians live a long time, it seems. Like, well, Freddie Prinze screwed up the curve. So did John Belushi. So some of them screw up the curve. But generally speaking, there is something about comedians. George Burns, all of these.
Milton Berle,
Groucho Marx, Henny Young. When they get to the 80s and 90s, a lot of them.
And you're in favor of that, aren't you?
I'm in favor of that part. But what I don't like is when these big celebrities die, you have to go through all of this stuff, and they lead the news, and you know already about the person. You don't need all this stuff. And it's just very bothersome. I did a much better job in the book of outlining these feelings than I'm doing now. This is just
Well, I mean, when
a
Bob
recap.
Hope does go to the great theater in the sky,
Yes.
I'm sure NBC, which was his home for, what,
Yeah.
35, 40, 50 years, there'll be hours and hours of tributes.
You'll have to see him in all those sketches where he put on hippie hair and said, "Far out, man, far out." You'll have to watch that. You'll have to watch parts of every road picture, and then a little. And at the funeral, there'll be these acne-ridden people getting autographs from all the stars who go to his funeral, and everybody will have their black golf clothes on, and some little comedian with a checkered hat will say that Hope had incredible timing. You watch for a little guy in a checkered hat. There's always one comedian favors a checkered hat, and he says, "Timing was brilliant. His timing was brilliant," and then he leaves. But so that's just something that disturbs
Little guy,
me.
checkered hat.
Little comedian
Timing
with a
was
checkered hat.
brilliant. Yeah.
It's brilliant timing, Hope's timing. And there'll be a guy from World War II who says, "I had my legs blowed off just before he came to entertain us. God bless him." You know, a guy like that. And I don't know what it means. It seems to not mean anything. But it's nice. We have rituals. I guess it keeps people feeling safe.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they can predict certain things.
One of the things that I remember most in your early appearances on The Tonight Show and later on Merv Griffin, you would do this thing, Wonderful Wino,
Yep.
W-I-N-O.
Yeah.
And I know that you worked for a time in radio, I believe in Boston.
That was the second stop. Boston is where I left Shreveport. I went to Boston. I had a
Were
friend-
you like a disc jockey?
I was a DJ in Shreveport.
Right.
I was on a top 40 station at the beginning of top 40. And I had a friend who went to Boston to become a sales manager. And I said, good market move, up from Shreveport to
Sure,
Boston.
sure.
Good move. But when I got there, it wasn't a top 40 station. It was a network station.
But remember when you worked at a little station, how you wanted to get to a bigger station?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when I worked in Savannah, Georgia, we were all aching to get like to Atlanta. It would
course.
be a big move, you know.
First thing you do when you get a new radio job is start making your audition tape for the next move.
That's right. That's
Don't
right,
you?
yeah.
Because you know you're going to knock somebody up and have to leave town. So you make a nice tape, air check. They say, "What are you doing?" "Oh, just checking on my diction," you know. But you're right, just to keep moving.
Oh, yeah,
Get
yeah.
the bigger market. Well, I got to Boston and it wasn't top 40. It was a network affiliate, NBC. They still had soap operas. This is 1959, the end of that era in radio. And I became a
that was
board
me
announcer.
in 57, the NBC with Monitor on the weekends.
Yes,
Remember they had that,
that's right.
that long radio program?
Yeah,
All kinds of-
Monitor, NBC Monitor, and they would have a variety of things. It was kind of innovative for its time.
Yeah.
And I became an announcer who ran the board and I had to play stuff like, God help me, Mantovani, you know, Frank Sinatra, Andy Williams, all this music that really, you know, you don't care about.
We had Candlelight and Silver, and all you could play was Jackie Gleason LPs.
Oh, Bobby Hackett on trumpet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was just terribly boring music to me. And I was 22, just turning 22. And I used to, they had a news unit, a mobile news unit, WEZE printed all over it, and it's 1260.
Can I take a break and then we'll
Take a break.
Okay, we're chatting here with George Carlin. The book Brain Droppings is now out in paperback. We'll continue with George and you on the toll-free if you call right after this short break. With George Carlin. So the mobile news unit, what are the call letters?
WEZE, 1260 on your dial in Boston, the easy listening line. And they had a mobile news unit, and one weekend I drove it to New York City to buy some marijuana and to be with my friends. And I was
They must have loved that.
Oh, it was wonderful. We were driving all around. See, I'm from Harlem. I'm from the Upper West Side of Manhattan, what we called West Harlem. And I had places that I could score over in Spanish Harlem, you know, and we were driving this mobile news unit all through Harlem looking for someone who had joints to sell. And they got a hold of me, not in the news unit. They got a hold of me a little later that night. I got home. They called me and said, "Where's the news unit?" I said, "It's outside. It's on 121st Street. And they said, "Well, we have a prison break at Walpole Prison here." And I said, "Well, they'll have another one next month, so cover that one." Because they always had a prison break. It was an easy place to get out of, apparently. So I said, "There'll be another one."
Exactly.
And that was the last thing I did that got me fired.
Yeah, yeah.
But I had set up the deal in such a way because Cardinal Cushing the Roman Catholic Cardinal Cushing of the Boston. You know, he was a celebrity in his own
He
right.
was the man who spoke at JFK's inaugural, wasn't
That's
he?
right, and a powerful figure in Boston politics and Boston life in general. And Cardinal Cushing, on this radio station I was on, the diocese bought 15 minutes each evening from 6:45 till 7, and he would lead the rosary. And there were apparently nuns and some priests and brothers, whatever, some religious members in his presence, and he would lead him. And they'd be holy member of the God, and all that, and he this night
This must have been a highly rated program.
it was big in Boston.
Really?
I'm telling you.
Okay.
And 15 minutes it was, and he's supposed to be over. 7 o'clock comes the news from NBC,
that's right.
and I'm running the board. And I have the FCC log there. It's my responsibility, Tom, right?
Yes, sir.
To get NBC on time.
Get the news on the air, 7 o'clock, sir.
Okay, and it was an Alka-Seltzer. It was a sponsored one.
That's correct.
It wasn't U.S. war bonds.
Not sustaining, fully
No.
sponsored, right?
And that means money that was in red on the log. And I'm sitting there, and he had started by talking about the Little Sisters of the Poor. He did about 10 minutes on there. I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 minutes on them. And he was late getting the rosary started. And he was up to about the fourth sorrowful mystery. And I decided, it's coming up, you know, it's about 10 seconds left. I say, well, he's got to go away. So I potted him down.
Yeah.
I bring up the network. Hey, Alka-Seltzer presents the news and everything. And he was on the phone, because you have a little earpiece in there. He was on the phone within 30 seconds. And his line was, I'd like to speak to the young man who turned off the holy word of God. And he was a voice, he sounded like he was coming from heaven anyway, because of his drama, very self-involved man. So that was, and the radio station, to their great credit, backed me up. They said he was running the log, and he was running the board, and he had...
Well, the radio station is interested not so much in the Word of God as they are in the Alka-Seltzer commercial
That's right.
payments for the
Although
commercials.
the diocese paid for their 15 minutes, but they had their 15.
That's right. They had their 15.
Later, Cardinal Cushing. So I went away from Boston happier and with a little bit of a reputation in town.
I'm sure. Here's Michael on the toll-free in Los Angeles. Hi, Mike, and welcome to CBS.
Hi, Mike.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
We're well.
I'd like to ask George how he feels getting old.
Oh, getting old? I thought that was the middle of a sentence. Oh, I feel fine about it. I have no problem. I'm 61 years old, and I really I don't think about numbers and stuff and death. I'll die at 94. I'm going to live till 94 because my Uncle Martin did push-ups in my kitchen when he was 94.
Okay. Michael, thanks for calling, and thank you for joining us on the phone tonight. Have you always had a problem with authority? Like, let me say 2 words to you.
Yeah.
Air Force.
Air Force. Yeah, we fought each other to a draw. It was just a wonderful thing. They had to let me go finally. You know, you enlist for 4 years, and you're supposed to stay 4 extra in the reserve. That was what you committed to.
That's right.
I was 17. I went in there, and I was in an elite maintenance squadron called Armament and Electronics Maintenance. We worked on the B-47s. There were no Trident submarines then. I mean, there were no atomic submarines. There were no missiles in silos. We were the only thing.
That's
We
right.
were called Strategic Air Command. We keep the peace. That was our slogan. Well, they didn't know what they got.
General Curtis LeMay, right?
General Curtis LeMay, a wonderful, stable man running that. Yes.
Not in danger of going around the bend
Never.
at any time. No. Remember the cigar? You know?
Oh, sure. He ran for president, too, didn't he? Arthur Godfrey was going to run for president with Kurt LeMay, I think, or something like that. It was just strange. Peter LaSalle told me that. Anyway, getting back to the Air Force, I didn't take to authority very well. But I was really bright when it came to this K-Systems mechanics stuff. I had the highest T-score in the history of the maintenance school at the time I got out. And they sent me down there to fix computers. There were analog computers, 3 of them in this plane, and there were 2 radar sets and optics. But I kept getting in trouble. I kept telling people the equivalent of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Verbal equivalent of that. And they would say, stand over here. And I would say,
See, if you say a dirty word, we can get that out.
Yeah.
But if you do that, there's no way we can get that out.
You can't. No, see, there you did it again. So I had 3 court-martials, and I had a slew of Article 15s. That's the punishment just short of a court-martial.
That's right.
I never did any time. I had a court-martial for failure to obey a lawful order. Another one was insubordination, and another one was falling asleep on guard duty
Uh-oh.
during a unit-simulated combat mission. It was cold. I went up onto the plane to sleep a while.
You were tired, exactly
Yes,
right.
I was tired.
Right.
And I'm the one who joined, so I ought to get to say what I do.
So how did you leave the Air Force?
It was mutual. It was like a divorce. It was like they looked at me one day and they said, "You know something? This isn't working at all. You know it. We know it. If you leave now, we'll let you have the clothing." They let me have the clothes. Keep the little hat. If you like the hat, take the big long overcoat.
Shoes look good on you, yeah.
Take them, but please go. Just go. And I got out with full pay and allowances. No reserve time, because they had no interest in me coming back for 4 years.
No.
Get him out of here. And full pay and allowances, no reserve time, kept the uniform, and honorable conditions. General discharge, honorable conditions.
Right.
So it was a nice face-saving thing for all of us, and I beat him out of 11 months. I still have the little calendar page, September 26, 1957, and it says, he, FY Air Force, I screwed you out of 11 months. That's how mature I was.
Yeah, exactly.
At 20.
Well, and your maturity has maintained itself through the years.
Increased.
Every year it gets a little,
more
mature.
serious
Right.
and sober.
That's right.
Yes.
You know, you mentioned that you drove the WEZE, was that the
Yes,
caller?
Wheezy.
To New York to
Right.
pick up some marijuana.
Yes.
Do you still smoke that stuff?
Only occasionally, only to punch up some writing. I don't, you know, it's too debilitating, to get you too weird for me. I mean, I can't do a lot of things I'd like to do. So what I do is
Would you care to delineate those?
No.
No. Okay.
I type up something that I like a lot. It's something I've been working on anyway, and it's been festering. I always use fester as a word my brother and I like to use for anything. It's an all-purpose
Festering,
word.
yeah.
Festering in me. And it finally comes out, and I type a nice thing up without any influence from the outside. And then a day later, one toke. That's all I need now. One toke, and I punch it up. That's when you sit there, and it gets better. It gets better. And then the next day, you have to take out half of that stuff, which sucks. But the other half that you found, whoa. Yes, good stuff.
Let me take a little break here with George Carlin. The book is called Brain Droppings, and we'll be right back after these messages. With George Carlin, here is Eric in one of America's most beautiful states, Essex Junction, Vermont. Hi, Eric, and welcome to CBS Late Night.
Hi, Tom. How are you tonight?
I'm fine, thank you. How's everything in Essex Junction tonight, sir?
Beautiful.
Oh, good.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Good.
great weather today.
Good.
Hi, Eric. How you doing?
Hi, George. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Oh, good. Glad to hear it. George, just curious. Like to know what your take on the Monica Lewinsky,
Bill Clinton.
Monica Lewinsky and the president.
Yeah.
How that sits with you?
Well, since I don't work topically, I've never developed any material on these topics. But I enjoy anything that makes people uncomfortable,
Right.
And puts people under pressure. And this is high stakes stuff. I love why. I don't see how people say, "Aren't you tired of that yet?" I don't understand those people. High stakes, blood sport at work, high drama, and people's reputations on the line. I just love watching it and hearing. Every time there's a new little detail, I really enjoy it. And I watch a lot of MSNBC because they talk about it all day.
All day and all night.
And I can handle it. I can handle it. Same with the OJ thing. Never got tired of it.
You said something interesting. I've never seen you do topical. You don't do current events.
It's
headlines.
wasteful. First of all, you seem like everybody else. They think you're just like everybody else because everybody has to have a Monica Lewinsky joke now. Secondly, it's too demanding. If something happens that day, you're expected to have something. I don't like that expectation on me. And I hate throwing away something good that I've developed for several weeks. And you have to, or you sound real dated. Some things have to be thrown away in 2 days. Some things last a month and you can keep it. But a year later, if you're still talking about something, you know.
Now, if you do a club date, you could probably still do stuff today and it'd work, huh? Remember the stuff
routine, a place for my stuff. Yeah, no, I don't do clubs. I work in theaters and concert halls.
Okay.
Yeah, and in some casinos. But I can't keep anything current from that far back because it requires doing it every weekend to keep it in good shape.
Right.
It's almost like a physical attribute.
Gotcha.
And I'd rather be working on new things because I give myself a 2-year limit for HBO. Every 2 years I want to have a new show. So that means I have to develop 60 minutes every 2 years. It's not as easy as it sounds because I'm a little bit of a stickler for perfection, and I try to get things beautifully polished and get them really right. So.
And your next HBO is not till 1999.
February, yeah. In February, the early part of February, the first weekend, I'll be doing my 11th HBO concert show live again from the Beacon Theater again in New York City.
Eric, I'm glad you called, and I hope that we have answered your questions, sir.
Well, thank you. Can I ask George one quick question?
Sure you can.
George, I just wanted to tell you I drove 100 miles through the worst spring blizzard that we had in Vermont in 1991 or 92 to see you in Burlington, and I'd like to know if you're coming back and when.
At some point, I certainly will. I don't have a date on Vermont on my list right now that I'm thinking of. Burlington, that great little theater there, I remember that snowstorm. Thank you for doing that driving. You'll hear about it from some radio station before I do, probably. Thank you for the interest, Eric.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, good night, Eric.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Let me ask you here about when you went on the Merv Griffin show, or the Tonight Show, and Jack Parr was off, as I recall, Arlene Francis.
Yes.
And you had a partner then.
That was Burns and I. Jack Burns, George Carlin, Burns and Carlin. He later was much better known for being part of Burns and Schreiber.
Oh, sure.
They were a little more famous. Jack and I did we did one television show, the Jack Parr Show, and Arlene Francis was the host that night. Artie Shaw and Arthur Schlesinger Jr. were on. The nice thing about doing that show, do I have a minute to develop this?
Sure.
Jack and I we wanted to be comedians. We wanted to get into show business as a comedy duo when we met in Boston at that radio station. Lost track of each other, and he showed up when I was working in Fort Worth. And there was a news opening. He was a good newsman. He got the news opening, and he was my nighttime newsman.
Oh, okay.
My earlier nighttime newsman was Bob Schieffer, who's now the CBS.
Oh, really? At CBS?
Yeah. I had a lot of famous newsmen. So Jack Burns and I developed these routines at home, and we would go to this club called The Cellar, which was the place that the Kennedy Secret Service people got bombed the night before the assassination, where they were criticized for drinking salty dogs all night. That was the club. We used to go there. It was like a coffee house. And we would do these routines and dream about being in show business. We're still in radio. Then we would retire to our apartment, and we'd watch Jack Parr. That was the holy grail for young comedians.
Oh, sure.
Watch Parr, and then we'd fantasize, we'd do make-believe interviews with each other as if we were on the Parr Show. And they were filthy. They were just for fun. Yeah. They were filthy. We'd sit there on our underwear, drinking beer. Now, this is February 1960, still in radio, and do these funny little dreams about being on the Tonight Show someday. October of that year, we were on it. What is that? About 7 months, not much more than 7 months later, we were on that show. So I always tell people, your dream can come true. You just never know how fast or how soon. We were on a fast track for some reason. We got out of that station, went to Hollywood, got into radio here in K-Day, got out of that, into nightclubs, and boom, we did the Tonight Show and had an album out all within 7 months.
When it happens, it can happen very, very fast.
Like a hat.
So now, when you went solo, you went on with Merv.
Yes.
And Merv, as I recall, you were so good the first time that he offered you, what, 13 more shows?
At the first date I went, I got 3 more. And I had to hurry up and write some material.
Well, that's where I'm going here.
Yeah.
When you have to write that much material and you don't do topical, I mean, you're probably writing now for HBO next February.
Yeah.
How could you write that fast to get yourself ready for all these appearances?
Well, I had fragments. I had one solid piece that got me on the first time. It was called The Indian Sergeant. And that was a spoof on Indians having a top sergeant. All the tall guys over by the trees, fat guys down behind the rocks. Now they give me 3 more. I had fragments in my act that I built up. I took the little bit of Wonderful Wino, Willie West, excuse me, with the tissue. Wonderful Wino, Al Sleet, the hippy-dippy weatherman, Biff Barf, the sportsman, picking them up and barfing them right back at you. And I had stuff about daytime television, you know, of women's shows and stuff. So I had fragments that I pulled together, and I did them on those other 3. But then they gave me 13 more shows.
And all of a sudden,
and you're supposed to be happy. And I'm thinking, 13 more.
Well, you're happy, but you know you have a mountain to climb.
You know it's going to be tough. So Merv, God bless him, the first one I came back on, the 5th show, he said, why don't you do that Indian Sergeant for us again? I said, oh, yeah.
Bless you, Merv.
Yeah. And I repeated all of them eventually once.
They're all wonderful. I have some of your albums.
That original RCA Victor album was 1966, recorded in 66, a year after I started on Merv.
It's as funny today as it was the day you did it.
Thank you.
Listen, thanks for coming on tonight. You've been very, very good to me, and I appreciate it. I always enjoy having you
Thanks for having this place.
Okay, you're welcome. Yeah, it's one of the last, kid.
Yeah.
George Carlin is the guest, and the book is out now in paperback. It is called Brain Droppings, and it is very, very funny.
Father's Day gift.
Good Father's Day gift as well. Graduation. Okay.
That's right.
Whatever's coming up.
Kind of cheap graduation gift.
Yes, it is, if you want to be cheap. Next, Nadine Strawson from the ACLU. Now, you had a run-in, didn't the ACLU and the 7 Dirty Words on TV, wasn't
No,
that
I never was in the ACLU, but I live near UCLA, so it's almost the same.
No, but did the ACLU have anything to do with...
No, they didn't. They were an amicus curiae, friend of the court brief, whatever that pronunciation is, amicus curiae or something. They submitted one of them, but that was the FCC versus Pacifica Radio. And the ACLU was a friend of ours in court.
Okay. Nadine Strawson from the ACLU joins us right after these messages.